DEA took all your money, your lab. You got nothing. Square one. But you know the business. And I know the chemistry. I'm thinking maybe you and I could partner up.
You want to cook crystal meth? You and me.
That's right.
Wow.
Either that, or I turn you in.
Breaking Bad is considered to be one of the best TV shows of all time. Whether you think it's the cinematography, the performances, the carefully structured story, and care that was put into that story that makes this one of the greatest shows of all time, it doesn't really matter in my opinion. Because one of the most important, if not the most important part of the show was the characterization of its two main leads, Bryan Cranston's Walter White and Aaron Paul's Jesse Pinkman. If there was even for a second that one of these characters were not as good as the other, or had a misstep along the way of the show would not be as iconic as it is today. From the title and the thumbnail, you can probably guess what this video is going to be about. Jesse Pinkman is my personal favorite character in Breaking Bad, and I think has the most compelling character arc in the entire show. I'm going to be talking about his character arc today and why I think he's the most tragic character in Breaking Bad. But before that, if you like this video, leave a like. If you want to stick around, subscribe. And if you want to comment your ideas, your interpretations, or your general notes about this video, or if you want to weigh on the topic, then let me know. I guess I'll just start off with that. I haven't seen El Camino, so I don't really know how Jesse's story ends, but I do like the kind of open-endedness that the show provides too. Remember, El Camino didn't come out until years after Breaking Bad ended because the creator himself thought that this was a good way to end his story, which I definitely agree with, so I won't be factoring it into this video at least. I think Jesse's character arc is really beautiful because it starts so simple. He was just some guy. He's just some addict who never really made anything of himself before the pilot, who partners up with some genius chemist who walked out of a billion-dollar company who has cancer and is ready to die at any moment. And you can't really talk about Jesse without bringing up Walter because Walter is so essential to Jesse's character arc. It really pushes him as a character and allows him to grow into the man that we see at the end of the series. And it's just so interesting, this dynamic, this duo, and genius, quite frankly. We learn a lot about Jesse in the early years of the show. He was Walt's old student, he was a slacker, he got addicted to weed and other drugs in a pretty young age, really. On the surface, he just seems like some hood rat, just some junkie who couldn't make anything of his life. But that's what makes Jesse's character so interesting to me. He wasn't built into this by some bad childhood or abusive parents. He loves his parents, and he goes on record to say multiple times that they are not at fault for the way that he turned out. He is just this guy. This is just who he is. For better or for worse, this is just the way that he turned out. And this is where Walt comes in. He starts the show as kind of this parental figure to him. Not exactly like a father and son type thing, not at all. It's more like a mentor thing, really. Teacher student, that whole dynamic. But it's the way that they start to show off, it actually improves Jesse's life. He's becoming better, and then through this lens we get to see Jesse's more compassionate side, which obviously we know it doesn't last long. Bit by bit throughout the entire show we start to piece together that Walter White was the worst thing that probably ever happened to Jesse, that he's the reason why Jesse's probably the most tragic character, like I said. But while we do put pieces together, we don't realize this until the end stages of the show, which we're not there yet. We're at the early stages right now. Like I said earlier, Jesse's life was pretty shit because of his own decisions and actions up until the pilot. But when he meets Walter White until the end of the show, let's just see all of the things that Walt has done indirectly or directly to Jesse over 5 seasons of the show. In no particular order, either directly or indirectly, Walter White is responsible for getting Jane killed, getting Andrea killed, poisoning a kid, got Jesse beat up multiple times, made him dispose bodies, made him murder someone, or even got him enslaved by fucking neo-Nazis. Jesus Christ! And it even sucks too because there's sections in the show where Jesse is genuinely trying to do better. He's gotten distant from Walt multiple times, whether it's from a girlfriend or a mentor relationship with Mike, and in each one of those scenarios there are instances where you can branch out and make an alternate timeline, other universe assessment where Jesse could have been really good, a good man in his other life, where he could have really done something of himself, where he didn't have to deal with the influence or intimidation of Walter White. Walt has indirectly made Jesse get into even worse cases of addiction. He has psychologically broken him, manipulated him, and he's broken Jesse to the point where he's about to set his house on fire. Let's go through a timeline of events of the worst thing Walt has done to Jesse. The first thing has to immediately be Jane. Jane is the most important in the first tragedy that he faces in the show. We saw a new side to Jesse for the first time. He was vulnerable, emotional, and we saw him care for someone other than himself. They promised each other a brand new life, a better life, that they would leave all the addiction behind, but before they got the chance, they decided to do it one more time. But the same night that they do it, Walter White just happens to be there and he just lets her die and gloats about it later. We see other instances of Jesse being compassionate in the episode where he has to get product back from a junkie couple and he bonds with their kid and leaves the scene for him to be found by the cops, so hopefully he would be ensured a better, more hopeful life, something that he couldn't have when growing up. Jesse is then forced to working for a crazy mob boss and forced to a shootout with the cartel, although those have not really anything to do with Walt, more like a side thing. However, the murder of Gail does. Jesse was forced into a position that nobody should have ever been put in. Murder takes a toll on you, and it took a toll on Jesse that he was barely able to recover from. I'm pretty sure there's still some untouched trauma in there that he has to deal with, but for the most part he was able to learn from it and harden from the experience. But the same can't be said when it happens to a kid. There's this thing about Jesse that I love so much, his compassion towards children. I know it's not something that should be unique for anybody, really. Everybody should be nice to kids, right? But something about when Jesse does it just hits much more harder because he has such a shitty childhood and he has a little brother and he knows what it's like for these drugs and this life to corrupt kids and children or teenagers even. So I've always loved that aspect of his character. But the innocent kid that had nothing to do with any of this, that was shot by Todd, it breaks him, it mentally scars him, and we know how he feels about involving kids into this, so now it's just completely over. But he doesn't break just yet. His final straw was with Brock. Jesse knew deep down all this time that Walt had something to do with that. Once he pieces it all together, he snaps. He's ready to burn his house to the ground until Hank reasons with him. All of this leads to probably Jesse's most tragic moment, besides the deaths. The betrayal of what he once thought was his friend. This is easily the worst thing Walt has ever done to Jesse, by the way. He taunts Jesse with the death of Jane, then sentences him to death. At least that's what he thinks, but Jesse really becomes a slave to the neo-Nazis. Blackmailed and then scared by the death of Andrea. Nobody deserves this. Nobody deserves this kind of punishment, even if you want to argue that Jesse was a hypocrite and that he also was a bad person for a good portion of the story. He always admitted to himself and his family that it was his choices, that his family had nothing to do with the way he turned out, that they raised him right, but all of the deaths, all of the murders, all the loved ones, that was all Walt. Jesse Pinkman was a compassionate guy. He cared for the little guy, and that little guy was used against him for a crueling work environment. The creator himself said that before El Camino came out, he imagined a happy ending for Jesse, and that he hoped that he ran off to the sunset and was able to make something for himself. And I genuinely hoped that he was able to do that, because in my opinion, he easily suffered the most, was traumatized the most, and deserved to leave it all behind the most. Jesse Pinkman was a kind-hearted individual, a good kid whose life got destroyed by addiction. A kid from when he first started out working with Walter White thought that he could make enough money to go to college, maybe do something in craftsmanship for a career, do something positive for a change and change his life around, make something better of himself. The new financial stability that he gained from his time with Walter White allowed him to rent out an apartment and meet new people, form brand new relationships, and even find brand new loved ones outside of his family. A family who abandoned him because of his struggling addiction. Any time that Jesse got comfortable with his newfound family, he would distance himself from Walter. He would become less focused on the product and the business. He would actually be ready to leave it all behind, be ready to change his life around. But every time that he was so close to redemption, Walter White would not let him. All of the manipulation, the abuse, the verbal abuse that Jesse endured from Walter White, he couldn't take it forever. He finally snapped and he was ready to do the ultimate redemption that someone could do in this series and go to the fucking cops. Even if it meant he went down with him, he would do anything to take down Heisenberg. Walter couldn't let that happen though. After having neo-Nazis kill his brother-in-law and a cop, he focuses on Jesse, gloats about how he killed his ex-girlfriend, and then sentenced him to death, just for him to become a slave to neo-Nazis and have even more of his loved ones murdered. Jesse didn't mean for any of this to happen, he just wanted to make money with his old chemistry teacher. Anytime somebody would involve kids, he would shut it down immediately. Anytime he had to be compassionate to someone and show them how kind he can be just so that he could show them a new path, he would always help them out. Jesse Pinkman, despite everything illegal that he did do in the series, was really, really kind. He was a kid that didn't want to hurt anybody, he just wanted to make some dough. And unfortunately, because his business partner was very addicted to this lifestyle, people got hurt. Jesse Pinkman got hurt. And he's one of the people who easily suffered the most in the Breaking Bad universe. And while I haven't seen El Camino, I'm genuinely hoping that he was able to get his happy ending, that he was able to change his life around and do something good with it, that he was able to deal with his trauma and leave that life behind. And that's what I genuinely believe, that Jesse is the most tragic character of Breaking Bad. Hey everyone, thank you for watching the video if you just finished it. Kind of a short video, I guess, not really one of my longer video essays. I didn't want to go too deep, I guess. I just really want to talk about Jesse, why I like him as a character a lot, and why I think his character arc resonates the most with me. I know, I feel like I relate to him the most. Obviously not with the murder part, you know, or the tragic deaths or shit. I just feel like I just see myself in him a lot. I don't know. I guess it might be because he's like the youngest one in the entire cast. He's supposed to be the comic relief. I don't know. I just really like him, I guess. Anything? I should be having. I think I already uploaded an Ant-Man review. That should be out by the time this is out. Anything else I'm working on later? I can't think of anything right now. I'm just compiling ideas, struggling this with college, you know, stuff happens, you know. But if there's anything you want me to cover, leave it in the comments below. I'm down to talk about anything. But yeah, I guess that's it for this little outro. If you like the video, like. If you want to stick around, subscribe. I really appreciate everything that you guys do for me, and have a good day.